Today on the Videomaker podcast, Chris and I talked to Alex Ferrari. He's a podcast host, an author, a filmmaker. He's the host of the Indie Film Hustle podcast. He has a new book, Rise of the Film Entrepreneur, which is all about making money in the film industry, the independent film industry. So we primarily talk about basically how to make money. If you're going to make a movie yourself and finance it yourself, we talk all about, how you can do that and not lose your life savings in the process. So really interesting conversation. Hope you enjoy it. Hope you learn a lot. As always, if you've been listening to the podcast and you like it, we'd love it if you went to iTunes, or I guess it's Apple Podcast now, or Spotify, hit the follow button, the subscribe button. It'll deliver the podcast right to your mobile device every Monday morning at 5 a.m. so you don't have to wake up and do that. So enough of all that. Let's get on with the show. Welcome to the Videomaker podcast. I'm Mike Wilhelm, and with me, as always, across the table is Chris Monlux.
What's happening?
And today, our special guest, Alex Ferrari. Alex, how's it going?
I'm good, man. How you guys doing?
So far, so good. I mean, considering the state of the world, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I always answer, anytime someone says, how you doing? I go, as good as I can be in this crazy upside down world we live in. It's insane.
Yeah, for sure.
So I right off the bat, though, you have the coolest name ever.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you.
It's just, everybody knows how to read it. Everybody knows how to say it. Man, you're like an action figure. It's awesome.
I appreciate that. And believe it or not, some people do not know how to say it. I've had weird pronunciations of my last name. So it's always fascinating because I always think Ferrari is a fairly easy name to say, but Ferrari, like the car, guys. It's just like the car. It's just like the car.
The cool red ones, sometimes yellow.
Yeah, interesting that you bring that up because I'm terrible with names, and I was just anticipating a correction there. Like, no, it's not Ferrari, it's Ferrari.
Yes, exactly. It's Ferrari.
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly how I pronounce it.
So, Alex, we always start it this way. So maybe you could just give us, some background about yourself. How did you get started in the world of filmmaking?
I started back in the 90s, and I actually started back in the late 80s. My first real job was working at a video store. If your listeners do not know what a video store is, they can Google it. Yeah. But that's where I kind of fell in love with movies. And then after high school, I just went to a film school in Orlando called Full Sail, where I promptly learned two very important skills: how to wrap cable and how to make a cup of coffee. I thought that was a good return on investment for the $19,000 I spent for my time there, which is now everyone listening, like, you only paid $19,000 to go to Full Sail? Like, yes, I did. And we could talk about that later if you'd like. But yeah, from there, I went into the commercial world and then started editing first. Then started directing commercials and music videos and things like that. And then gradually opened up a post house, shot a couple of films, short films that got a lot of attention back in the day. And I'm skipping through a whole bunch of stuff. There was a moment there in my late 20s where I almost made a $20 million movie for the mob.
Wow.
And I wrote a whole book on it called Shooting for the Mob, where I was literally, my life was threatened for about a year, where my production offices were in and I can't make this up, 1960s racetrack. Wow. And my production office was in a shut down smoking lounge.
Awesome.
And if that wasn't cool enough, then Hollywood took this guy seriously, and I was flown out to LA multiple times. I was in Miami at the time, and I was flown out to LA, and I met the biggest movie stars in the world, the biggest $1 billion producers. I'm at the Chateau Marmont. I have a whole chapter on how I met Batman. Nice. When I actually went to Batman's house and talked about him being in my movie, one of the actors who played Batman. So that was one small chapter in a much larger career that I've been doing.
But I have to ask which Batman.
I'm sorry? I
have to ask which Batman.
Well, I can't tell you. You have to get the book. Read the book. You have to read the books.
I'm assuming Adam West is what I'm.
I always say it's Adam West. It's Adam West, obviously.
The greatest Batman.
Yeah.
The greatest Batman ever.
King of camp.
So, you got you started in a video store. So when I was a kid, I loved going in to rent movies at our local, video rental place. It was called Ray's Video. I don't know if Chris, if you remember Ray's. Yeah. But they had the whole thing where they had all kinds of movies to rent, obviously, but you could also rent video cameras there. And we would occasionally get our hands on one of these. Like my dad would rent it for some home movie thing, and then my brother and I would like make home movies. So how about you? How did you first get started? Like, when was the first time you put your hands on a camera to make something?
My grandfather gave me a high 8 camera in, I want to say 87, 88, 89, something around there at that time. And I started shooting stuff around the house. I started asking my my high school teachers if I can turn in videos as opposed to reports. I didn't know how to edit. I didn't even understood what editing was. You have to remember back in the late 80s, early 90s, there was no information about filmmaking other than at a film school or whatever behind the scenes, videos you would have seen of the making of Star Wars and Raiders of the Lost Ark. Essentially, that was it. There wasn't a lot of information, or books, if you could find books on the subject. So I didn't even understand what editing was, but I understood that if I press play on this VCR and record on this VCR, and then stop it and fast forward, I can cut footage together. And that's how I kind of started putting it all together. I actually did my first visual effect with that camera, which I don't know if any of you guys ever tried this at home, but you actually plug in the camera, you put the video out of the camera into old television, whatever that was said, it's like the coax cable, whatever, I forgot but you plug it in, then you aim the camera at the screen and you get a tunnel of light.
The infinity screen.
The infinity. And it was like the coolest thing I'd ever done. And then I would put my hands in it and I would put like cool things I'd cut out in it. And these were the visual effects I did at the time. And then I would edit in, I would have soundtracks, but I would not be able to edit in the music. Like from 2001, I would actually just play it on my boombox while I'm recording the shots. So it was like all in camera. It's just like what you do. It's what you do when you're coming up. And that was kind of the first stuff I did. And then when I was working at the video store, I was the youngest guy there. I was the manager at 15, but most of the guys were older than me. They were in the 1920s, and they wanted to, they started shooting, short films. I had one of my coworkers shot a whole movie about the hoverboard because that was really hot back then, from Back to the Future 2. And we shot this whole hoverboard movie, and I was the drug dealer. I don't know why I had long hair, but apparently, I'm Latino, so obviously I was cast as the drug dealer. It was very stereotypical. I'm extremely offended, personally, but that was just cool. And we just kind of did this kind of cool stuff back in the day. And that's how you learn. Now there's so much information, so much gear, so much opportunity. It's completely, I sound like a dinosaur. It's almost as barbaric as what Spielberg did with a Super 8 camera back in the day. So it's like, it was just the next level up from that. And then after me, it was like, oh, now we can actually edit on our computers with Final Cut or, God forbid, Premiere back in the day.
Yeah, it's wild to think today, kids are doing all that without ever leaving their phone, right? Like they're shooting the thing on there, they're editing it on there, they're distributing it on there, like they're getting 1 million views on there.
It's insane.
I always think about that, like in the way of, all those analog things, all the tangible things, the things that we were doing, we had to figure out, you had to stumble upon, I have this kind of cable, I think. And now it's so simple is that invention through like discovery of I'm trying to make this happen, and a happy accident happens, like that's kind of neat. And now that's like, I applied 5 effects on this and it looks kind of interesting or what have you. It's all in computer experimentation. It's not through the, I remember tightening up when I was going VHS to VHS to make sure that I didn't have too much white noise between shots. So I tightened up the tape so that I could hit it right where it needed to, and it's just crazy. No one even knows how to deal with that. When's the last time you saw a VHS or a tape of any kind?
I still have a couple. I had a 4,000 VHS collection that I carried along with me for quite some time until I finally moved out to LA. And I said, I think it's time.
That's like a truck. That's like a truck full of VHSs.
It's time to let go. It's time to let go. And then I transferred a bunch of it over to DVD, and now I'm just like, it's instant. So now everything is instant. And I have some old Criterion. I just sold my laser discs.
Wow.
Believe it or not, I had a full Criterion collection laser disc thing and my Laserdisc player, and I sat there and I was just like, why do I have this? I'm never going to play it. I'm never going to open up the Raging Bull Criterion collection from 1986. I'm just not. I'm not going to do that. I don't care that it's an original commentary by Martin Scorsese that doesn't exist in any other platform other than the Laserdisc. I don't care enough. So I sold it on Craigslist for like $250 for my entire collection. I was like, and I asked the guy, why are you buying this? He's like, oh, I have a projector in my backyard and I like to play movies on the projector in the backyard. I'm like, Godspeed, sir.
Yeah, enjoy. So you mentioned spending $19,000 on film school.
Yes.
And so, there's a lot of, contention around film school, and is it worth it? Is it not worth it? And people have great arguments on both sides. What was your experience?
I loved it. I thought it was wonderful. But it was a different time. So one, it only cost me $19,000. Let's say $20,000 even. Okay. That's a manageable number to return, like to get money back. And it's a decent ROI. So in other words, if you invest $20,000 in that kind of education, the chances of you recouping that money within a 5-year period is fairly high. And I did. I was able to not only recoup all of that money, pay off my debts, pay off my student loans, and actually start making money in the business fairly quickly. Did that school help me do that? At the time, yes. There was no other options. There was no other way to get experience, especially where I lived, which was down in South Florida. There was, there's some South, other than Miami Vice back in the 80s, there wasn't a whole lot of stuff going on other than music videos and commercials and things like that, which is great. But, I went up to Orlando, which of course was going to be the next Hollywood, which eventually was what Georgia turned into. Because of great tax incentives, but we can talk about that later as well. But I think in today's world, what film schools in general, I think, and this might be controversial, and if you guys have followed me at all, I don't shy away from controversy. I'm just getting too old to care. I think personally that film schools are doing an insanely bad job of educating their students in what it really takes to make a living in the business. They're teaching them the dream. They're teaching them gear. And by the way, if you have a school that teaches you gear, that's actually a step up. Like Full Sail is a school that teaches you gear, but a lot of these film schools will teach you theory, and that's great. And film history, fantastic. But at the end of the day, they're teaching you the dream. They're not teaching you how to actually make money. They're not teaching you how to open up a business, how to open up how to become a freelancer, how to do taxes, how to open up an LLC or an S Corp to incorporate yourself as a freelancer, how to open up a business and how to bill and what profit and losses are. These are all things that a filmmaker wanting to make a living in the business by themselves as an entrepreneur, film entrepreneur needs to understand. Sure, if they get a job working staff somewhere, they don't have to worry about these things. But everyone listening, and you guys probably, I hope you guys agree, those jobs are becoming rarer and rarer because there's so much competition. When I showed up, there wasn't that many people doing what I was doing. It was what we were talking about, the mid 90s. So yeah, it wasn't like Tarantino had just showed up. And when Tarantino showed up, that's when the rock star director showed up. That's where everybody was. Like, it was super cool to be the director. Like, Spielberg was cool and Scorsese was cool, but they weren't everyday people didn't know who they were. Maybe Spielberg, but still Spielberg was not a rock star. He was a legend even back then. But the cool factor started with Tarantino. And then everybody's like, wait a minute, I want to be cool like that. And that's when the film school started selling that kind of dream and that sizzle, but they don't know how to sell the steak. So I think it's absolutely horrendous that you would teach a film student how to make a film and then never teach them how to sell that film or how to actually generate any revenue with that film. Because they're setting these kids up for absolute disaster throughout their career. Because one, they don't have the skill set to actually make money with it. Two, they are loaded with with debt from student debt that they can never get rid of. It is something that is with them for life. They can't bankrupt their way out of it. None of that. So now a lot of these guys, and I know these guys, I've met these people, and they go, look, yeah, I have a $60,000 student debt. I've got $80,000. I've heard $150,000 debts. They'll never make that much. It's going to take them 20 years. So you're basically walking around with a mortgage on your head before you even get a chance to get a job or even know what to do with it. Sure, you might know what the coolest new lens is, cool new camera is. You might hear, hey, maybe I can open up a YouTube channel. But do you see? But it's not cool. Like if you're a doctor or a lawyer, there's a path. Like you go to medical school, they have a whole system on how to get you. You're working while you're at school. You're doing your residency, then you kind of go out and you're working. You're automatic. There's a system. Film schools, there's nothing like that. Nor do they care. There's a lot of these big film schools that just all they care about is getting bodies, butts, and seats, and just milking them for everything they're worth. But that's just my humble opinion.
I kind of wonder if they did offer that people would not be as interested, because I think some people are like, oh, I want to be all the creative stuff, but the practical stuff's not as interesting to them. So you actually might have fewer people in there, and it probably is why they're doing that. Is they want butts and seats, they want people.
Oh yeah,
fighting for the dream, right?
Yeah, well, they want to sell the sexy. I mean, the newest lenses, guys, is sexy. 8K is sexy. Profit and loss statements and how to incorporate an S corp is truly not what I jumped in this boat for.
Oh, come on.
But I know. I love it, but not everybody does. But the bottom line is, though, without that business side of things, you can't survive. If you want to be an artist and do this as a hobby, you want to be a hobbyist, that's great. I always use the analogy, if I go out right now and buy a guitar and learn how to play that guitar, and let's say I practice really hard on that guitar, and I can maybe, bust out some Guns N' Roses acoustic versions, okay? And maybe, just maybe, I'll get a gig or two post-COVID at a coffee shop, and maybe doing a gig on a weekend or something like that, maybe make $50 or $100. That is a hobby. That's not a career, because I'm not sustaining myself nor my family with that occupation. There's nothing wrong with it, but you have to be clear about what this is. And most filmmakers I've discovered in my travels are hobbyists. They want it to be a career, but they don't want to do the work, or they don't have the opportunity to learn the things that are needed to actually make a living in the business. I was smart enough when I came out of film school that I wanted to be a director. That was my main goal from the moment I said I was going to go into film school. I want to be a director. But I understood that for me to get my first directing jobs, and mind you, this was back when it cost a lot to direct. Like, I mean, my commercial reel cost $50,000 because I shot it on 35, and I got 3 commercials out of it. Now with that same $50,000, I could shoot a feature comfortably and make money with it. But back then it wasn't like that. So I was smart enough to understand, I'm like, you know what? I need something to kind of have as a baseline throughout my career. And post-production was that for me. I edited. So whenever I wasn't directing, I was always editing. Then I went into color grading. Then I went to post-supervising. And then I opened up my own post house. But that was my foundation. And then everything else built on top of that, because I, on an instinctual level, understood that I needed something to keep the money flowing, because the dream wasn't going to do it. And that's what a lot of no, I don't think there are any film schools who teach that. And a lot of filmmakers don't even think about that. They just think about the dream, or I'm going to open up a YouTube channel. You just have to really understand what you're getting into.
You say these staff gigs are rare, but really even going back to the 90s and earlier, they've always been pretty rare if you can compare it to the lawyer jobs, the accounting jobs, or whatever.
There's
right?
not one in every community.
Like filmmaking has always been kind of the original, the OG gig economy, right? Like you're always the freelance, you're always sort of jumping from one gig to the next. I mean, yeah, there were staff gigs, but like I said, those were quite rare. And even thinking about it now, we're in kind of a small town here, and everyone we know who's in this industry, except for one person who we've had on this podcast, I think Jason Miller, who works for a TV station, everyone is independent. And, they're not in Hollywood making feature films. They're doing commercial work. They're doing event videos, and they're all independent, I think, right? Chris, can you think of anyone who we've worked with who's not independent, who's not running their own thing?
No, I mean, I think once you work for someone for a short period of time and then you go on your own, you figure out what it takes to do it and then you do it. But that's kind of a different angle. Like, when the work is plentiful, you can take a path. When you have to kind of fight for it, you go where it takes you, right?
Yeah, or you're just amazingly scrappy, right?
Yeah.
Directors are often super scrappy. Yeah, they have to be for sure. So yeah, absolutely. I think you're right about that. And it's ironic you said that these film schools really started to spin up and try to recruit people right as Tarantino started to become famous. Because if my memory is any good, which maybe it's not, Tarantino was like the guy who was sort of came to rose to fame outside of the film school structure entirely. Right? It was George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, who were these like old school, people who came up through USC or whatever. Tarantino came out and he was a guy who just like started making movies and they were great.
Yeah, he just watched videos at a video store.
Yeah.
Like he just watched videos at a video store and he's like, I'm a director. I'm going to go direct and I'm going to go write like the greatest stuff ever. And he is an anomaly. I mean, he is a once in a generation kind of individual. I mean, there's nobody like him, nor will there ever be anyone like him. But that time period, that 90s time period when Sundance started to explode and the whole independent film movement started, that's when the film schools started to really pound it in. Because in the 80s, you went to film school, you went to NYU, you went to USC, you went to UCLA. There was a handful of them. You went to AFI. But it was small. But now it's everybody, New York Film Academy, Full Sail, LA Film School. There's so many of these schools out, and they're expensive as hell. And if anyone's listening, you don't need to go to film school. You don't. If you can go to film school for free and you don't have to worry about money, God, go. It's so much fun. It's great. You get to meet people, you get to shoot, you get to play with some toys. Fantastic. If I was going to do it all over again today, I would either look for a local community college who has very cheap, credits to teach me some basics and to give me access to some gear if I was just starting out. That is much more important. Do that for a year or two while you're learning, while you're building out your own content. You should be interning like crazy. I mean, when I was in film school, I was on Universal's backlot and Disney's MGM's backlot doing PA work and interning for shows, network shows and things like that. I skipped school because I learned so much more working on a set and working with professionals in a set than I did, teaching me like tapeless studio. Like, what the hell is, like, I know you're like, what the hell is that? Like, they're teaching me the CMX 3600. Mm-hmm. Now I'm getting old with that kind of stuff. But yeah, and like, it was such a weird time. It was like right in that, I came to school when the digital revolution just started. Like mini DV had just come out. The Avid was like a thing. My post-production teacher told me, and I quote, "A computer will never be able to produce broadcast quality video. It's just never, ever." And this was standard def. This was standard def, which now my iPhone, does 10K, whatever it does now? Come on.
Well, we get so used to technology now, like pretty much doubling in speed every year. There was a time when technology wasn't so quickly, so to be able to see that this thing that needed that, this isn't going to, you wouldn't be able to make this happen, but the exponential growth of the technology has really been the antithesis really of this, I guess, new era of video production in your pocket, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's the greatest thing and the worst thing all at the same time, having so much access to this kind of gear, because it's great because now people who did not have an opportunity to have access to these kind of tools has them. So there's going to be more voices, more things out there, more voices, more stories from diverse people who would not normally get access to this kind of stuff. Like I did a whole story on Wakaliwood, which is he's a filmmaker in an African country, basically built an entire industry, the film industry, by himself with Premiere 1.5 and I think it was a mini DV camera, and he just does films for his local town. And then now he's like world famous, and he's had documentaries made of him and all this kind of stuff. But if it wasn't for that kind of technology, even that basic kind of technology, a voice like his would have never happened. And then the bad version of that is now everybody has access. So the good thing is everyone has access. Bad thing, everyone has access. So now the reason why we're not making as much money as we used to as filmmakers in selling our movies or distributing our films are many reasons, but one of the main reasons is too much competition. There's too much content out there. There's too many people putting out, crap, that it's harder for voices to be heard. So now you have to become not only a good filmmaker, you have to become a good business person. You have to become an expert marketer. You need to build audiences. There's so much more to being a filmmaker in today's world than it was when I was coming up. When I was coming up, I could literally just sit down and learn an Avid, take the 3-day weekend course, get certified as an Avid, and I was making $50,000 to $70,000 a year as a freelancer in Florida.
Yep. Those days are long gone.
Those days are gone. I was making $50 an hour as an editor in 1996. I don't know if editors are even making $50 an hour now. I mean, they'll package it along with. What do you think?
Oh yeah, I'm not sure. It's got to be half that, right? Like, at least in terms of like the overall average. I mean, there are certainly editors that are making far more than 50. But of
course, but like generally speaking, like I was just an editor in South Florida. I was making $50 to sometimes $70 an hour, cutting commercials, music videos. I remember music video I cut would be like $500,000. Yeah. $500,000 budgets, $1 million budgets for like third tier acts.
Yeah.
Like people you wouldn't even know if I told you who they were. And it was just a different time. So in today's world, you have to be so much better at not only the filmmaking craft, but all these other side things outside in the periphery of running a business, of personal finance, of marketing. And that's why a lot of filmmakers fail, because they don't want, they're like, I didn't sign up for this. Tarantino didn't have to do this. Spielberg didn't have to do this. I'm like, yeah, well, I promise you, if little Stevie Spielberg showed up today, I don't know if he gets seen.
Yeah.
I can promise you if Robert Rodriguez and Kevin Smith showed up today with Mariachi and Clerks, no one would ever know who they were. It would never, ever see the light of day.
Well, it's one of those things where it's interesting to think about how many clerks are there out there right now, right? That no one ever sees.
Just sitting there
and it's because of lack of marketing, lack of understanding how to get. There's so much more you need to learn, and that's what I try to do at Indie Film Hustle, is try to explain this to as many filmmakers as possible and give them the raw truth of what it really takes to make a living in this business. Because like I've said many times before, there's a word show in the word business, and the word business has twice as many letters as the word show. And there's a reason for that.
Yep, for sure. Okay, maybe that's a good spot to pause for a break, and we'll come right back in just a minute. Videomaker has been the go-to website for video production professionals and enthusiasts since 1986. There's a reason a quarter of our audience has been following us for more than 10 years. Simply put, our content makes our audience better at producing video. For whatever level you're at, we have the content to get the quality of work where you want it to be. Nobody knows this better than our Videomaker Plus members. With exclusive offers and access to courses, webinars, back issues, and the digital magazine, they're able to stay up on the top of their production game. So now we want our podcast listeners to get in on the exclusive access. For a limited time only, we're offering a $100 discount to our Professional Plus annual membership. That's 42% off the normal price. To claim this exclusive deal, go to videomaker.com/2020plus. That's videomaker.com/2020plus. PLUS, not the symbol. It only takes a minute to sign up, and you'll get immediate, unrestricted access to all of our content. Don't wait. This offer will not be around for long, and you just can't ignore the benefits. That's $100 you can save that can go straight to new gear, software, accessories, whatever you want for your production setup. Don't wait. This offer won't be around for long. Once again, claim your exclusive offer now at videomaker.com/2020plus. Okay, welcome back. So, Alex, I want to move on to, just a couple more topics. But before we do, just because of the topic we've been on, I think this is a good opportunity to just mention that you have a book on this topic we've been talking about for the past 20 or so minutes, Rise of the Film Entrepreneur.
Yes, it's called Rise of the Film Entrepreneur: How to Turn Your Independent Film into a Money-Making Business. It is the first book of its kind. I actually created a system, I call it the Film Entrepreneur Method, on how to generate revenue from your film using this model, which is creating multiple ancillary products and or services outside of the film, where now you've changed the game, where now the film almost becomes an advertising for the other things that you can sell and make money with. And I use case studies for every single point in the method, multiple case studies of filmmakers doing this, because I've had the opportunity to do that on my show. So I've met so many filmmakers, and I started seeing these patterns, and then I saw patterns within my own work of what I did back in the day and what I do now, that I said, you know what, there's nobody who's talking about this, so let me write a book about it. And I created a podcast over and a website and all this thing, but it's became a bestseller instantly, and it's still selling like hotcakes. Every day I check my numbers, I'm like, Jesus, it's a lot of people have bought the audiobook or ebook or paperback of it on a daily basis. People are finding it everywhere around the world, and it's humbling, but I hope it helps. I hope it helps, because we are in a very desperate time as filmmakers, and now this is all. We were in a bad shape pre-COVID. Post-COVID, I don't even know. Nobody knows what it's going to look like in 6 months. All I know is it's probably not going to be any better than we're at right now.
Yeah, it's like you hear a lot of stories about people who are independent filmmakers who have like drained their bank account or borrowed from family and friends, or are taking out, and they're putting purchases on their credit card or whatever to make a movie, and then they, maybe take it on the film circuit and hope for the best. Hopefully someone will buy this thing and I can make my money back, and that's about it.
Right. What kind of business model is that?
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, and the other part of it, there was probably people doing that right before COVID, right? So there was someone just finishing that dream film with all of their heart and skin in the game, and then nothing to do with it. I mean, luckily we have, digital distribution like we do now. I mean, I really think, luckily there is business to continue to do, but it's not nearly the volume, just because people don't get together, right?
Well, there's also that, but imagine the poor filmmakers who got into South by.
Oh yeah. I mean, for sure. It was canceled a week before it was supposed to happen or something.
Right. You work your entire career to get into a festival like South by Southwest, and now you are premiering a South by Southwest, and oh, by the way, it's canceled. Like, I can't even comprehend what that is and what that did to the financial returns on those films, let alone the emotional toll that it took on the filmmakers involved. It's insane how filmmakers make movies now, because everybody's trying to make a movie, but not many of them know how to make money with it or understand the rules of the game, because they think it's 1996, and it's not. Most filmmakers are making films thinking that they're going to go to Sundance, that pre-Me Too movement, a guy like Harvey Weinstein's going to come down from Mount Hollywood and write a check and give them $1 million, and then all of a sudden their career is going to take off. And that's what the 90s was. But that myth is so dead. It's been dead for a long, long, long time. But I talk to filmmakers on a daily basis, and it fascinates me how, I don't mean to be mean, but ignorant it is, because I felt that way too. I thought I was playing by the rules of the 90s for a long time, till I realized I'm like, oh, we're not in the 90s anymore. Oh, I got to do something different. And that's when I started educating myself on the process of how to try to make actual money with your films, keeping your budgets low, how to cast it properly or not cast it properly, and genre based and niche based. There's just so many ways to generate revenue with your film. But most filmmakers don't think about that. They think about the dream. They think about the red carpet. They think about the magical lottery ticket. And I call it the lottery ticket mentality, because that's what they think it is they think that some magic person's going to come in and give them their dream. And that's why this entire industry preys upon the independent filmmaker, because of that specific thought pattern in indie filmmakers, is that like, oh, I need someone else's permission. I need someone else's, someone else is going to give me access. Someone else is going to pay me for this. Someone else is going to do this. Where in today's world, filmmakers have to take responsibility for their own actions and their own films and their own productions and their own money, and learn how to make money with it. And that's what I try to teach on a daily basis.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where there's a lot of people who lose a lot of money getting started, right? Like just sort of
most.
Yeah, exactly.
Most.
So I don't actually. There's a statistic here. Maybe you've got the real number, but I'm just gonna take a guess. There's something like 95% of movies lose money, right? Like, and the whole film industry is based around that gamble that every once in a while, out of every 20 films is going to make enough money to pay for the rest, which is fine for studios, not fine if you happen to be one of the thousands of people who are sinking your own life savings into one of these 19 out of 20 movies.
Yeah, you can't do your life savings 20 times hoping that one of them will hit, right?
Yeah.
You only get one chance out of that, and hopefully,
Yeah. So
and we haven't even talked about the predatory film distributors who are ripping filmmakers off on a daily basis. I see these contracts I consult filmmakers all the time, and I see these guys. I mean, I call it, if you remember before Me Too, there was the casting couch.
Yeah.
That was a thing. People understood, like, oh, she got the part because it was at the casting couch, or he got the part because he had to go on the casting couch to get that part. And it worked on both sides. And it was even in movies. It was a joke. It was a punchline. And finally, Me Too happened and brought light to this horrific practice that was standard practice in Hollywood since the days of Chaplin.
Yeah, decades.
It's decades and decades. The same thing is happening, but in a financial sense, where how many times have you heard a filmmaker go, oh, I got screwed by the distributor, or movies never make money because of Hollywood accounting?
Yeah.
That it's the equivalent financially. It's a financial raping of the filmmaker, of the producer, of the people who invest in films, because the system, the film distribution system, is systematically set up to screw the filmmaker. And I'm saying that with I'm saying that knowing the realities of the contracts that I see. The system is set up to take advantage of the filmmaker. It's the rarity that doesn't happen. And that happens, by the way, with every scope. I mean, they said Forrest Gump made no money. Paramount came out and said, yeah, Forrest Gump didn't make any money.
Big loser.
Yeah, it's Hollywood accounting. $700 million, won the Oscar. Are you kidding me? But that's Hollywood accounting. That's the studio system. That is the contracts that they set up, because they're always going to win. The house always wins unless you stack the chips in your favor.
Or you become the house.
There you go.
Or you're Tyler Perry and you become the house.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I got nothing but respect for that man. And he owns, by the way, I don't know if you guys know this, he owns all of his stuff.
Totally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He owns all of the medias, every film he's ever made, every show. He owns it and licenses it out, and that's the way he's been able to build up his empire. Same way that Lucas was able to build up his empire, because he owned sequel rights. He owned merchandising rights to Star Wars. That's why J.K. Rowling, I don't know if you know this, but J.K. Rowling owns the ebook rights to all the Harry Potters.
And that's part of why she's a billionaire, I guess, right?
She's the only author on Amazon that if you go to Amazon and click Harry Potter book and click ebook, it kicks you out of Amazon and takes you to her Pottermore.com website where you can buy it there. That's how, and she's made hundreds of millions of dollars over the years because of that one little negotiation thing that she grabbed. But if they wanted the books, they wanted the movies, they're going to give it to her. And there you go. Ownership and building up your own library. I had a filmmaker the other day. He's got 20 films. He's been working on it for a decade. He does 2 films a year. All he does is license his films to BET, to cables, to Showtime. He sells DVDs. He doesn't even sell them on VOD. I told him, like, dude, you don't have your stuff on VOD. I never even thought about it. Because he's making so much money owning his stuff. He's building out his own stuff. He's building out a mini Tyler Perry in Chicago. Like, he's buying a sound stage. He's building a backlot so he could just start pumping these 2, 3, 4 movies out a year. and he knows his audience. This is what you need to do to be a filmmaker in today's world, not what they teach you at film school.
This is just, you said it earlier, but it's just a reminder that this is a business. And a lot of people who get into it don't think about that. They think about, like you said, the dream, right? And being a rock star and all that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And, there's a lot of things as you're growing your career that it's okay to learn the hard way. Like you could learn the hard way that you got to put the sandbag down on the light stand or the whole thing can go. That's pretty bad to learn the hard way, but you can learn that the hard way. You don't want to learn this one the hard way where you lose your ass or your career just is in the dumps. Those people either learn the hard way and they find a new career elsewhere, or they learn the hard way and they just lose a bunch of money. And either way is not a good outcome.
Guys, let me ask you guys a question. How many filmmakers do you know that are gone out of the business because they learned the hard way? Friends of yours that you saw coming up or worked with at one point who just said, I'm out. I can't, I'm out.
Yeah, good question. I think that most everyone who I know in the industry is out of the narrative and documentary world, and they might stay in the media business somewhere, but they're not making movies. Like they got they're doing other work. They're doing
other production work.
They figured out that like I got to make a living.
Yeah, exactly.
So if I want to stay in this business, I'm gonna do wedding videos, which there's nothing wrong with doing wedding videos. I'm just saying, or do something that they didn't intend to do to stay in the business. Yeah. And then maybe 20 years down the line, they've made enough of a nest egg to give another shot at a feature film, or to take another shot at a documentary, mm-hmm. or do something that they really want to do. Or I just know filmmakers who just left and they just went into business, went into finance, got a job at an office somewhere, telemarketing, whatever, because they just, it destroyed them. I've seen this business destroy families, divorces, because of that exact thing of, oh, I'm going to mortgage the house for my dream, not understanding how I'm going to return that money, get that money back. And, oh, by the way, now I have no job. I haven't done this. And we lose the house. And now all of a sudden the family, divorce. I mean, it's sad. It's depressing. I hope people listening like, Jesus Christ, this is a really rough episode. But I hope that by talking about this, it kind of throws a seed into everybody's mind. I'm like, you know what? I got to figure some stuff out, because this is a brutal business. It's a wonderful business. It's fun. It's great. We're carnies. I always call us carnies. We're carnies. We're circus folk. We just go from town to town shooting stuff, put up our tent, do the show, come back down. It's the people you meet are wonderful, for the most part. You have a great time doing the work when you get the opportunity to do the work. But the realities behind the scenes is so brutal and so cutthroat that if you don't understand the game and the rules of the game before you walk in, you will get run over. You will get demolished. I've seen it. It happened to me multiple times in my career. And I had my eyes open. Don't forget, when I was 26, I was working for a mobster. Literally had my eyes open of what could happen. Even then, I was still devastated multiple times in my career. Over my 25 years of doing this, I've crapped out 2, 3, 4 times. I've almost left the business 2 or 3 or 4 times.
I think there's this thing that happens with a lot of people where, they go into it and they think, I want to be a director. Everyone watches movies and looks at it and goes, I want to make that. I've got an idea. I think I can make that. And along the way, this has happened to a number of people I know, myself included. You discover that, well, actually, you know what? I thought I wanted to be a director, but the thing I really like is just like running the camera. I don't need to write it. I don't need to do the business side of things. In which case, now you have discovered maybe a whole new career path to do other things. And maybe that's your motivation to actually just like make wedding videos, which, can be a great career. I know a lot of people who do really well at that.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
But there's this there's definitely this self-discovery that happens along the way. So anything that you can do to avoid, learning the hard way there and getting crushed by the industry, if you can learn that sooner rather than later, then all the better, I guess.
I agreed. And I was always single-minded that I needed to be a director. But I fell in love with post. where I love doing editing. I love doing visual effects and color grading and all that kind of stuff. And it added to my arsenal of tools that I can use in my directing gigs and how I could package out jobs because I could bring post to the table. And I also had camera gear and all this other stuff. So I learned a lot of tools along the way. But I know filmmakers, I know people that were in film school with me, and actually only one other person in film school that I went with film school actually is still in the business. Everyone else left. Is that they started off like, I want to direct because I saw Tarantino's behind the scene of Pulp Fiction and I want to be a director now. And then they get on set. They're like, you know what? This directing thing sucks, man. That's a lot of stress. This is, Jesus Christ. It's going to take me forever to get a project done. But you know, that guy over there who's running the camera, he's working all the time and he gets to be on set. And he's having a good time. Maybe I want to be a DP. Maybe I want to be a DP. Maybe I'll start with camera and see what happens. And then you go like, oh, God, I've been working with this DP forever. DP's work is hard. I'm just going to be the camera guy. And that's fine. And that's completely cool. And they make a career out of it. And that's perfectly fine. It's discovering of where you want to be in this business. But understanding the basics, the foundation is that you need to make a living somehow while you're chasing that dream. And if you're lucky enough where your dream and your occupation hit in this business, then you're loving life. That means you've hit the jackpot because you're going to work every day following your dream, which, believe it or not, is a rarity in this business.
Okay, that's maybe a good spot to segue to our typical kind of closing question here. So we're coming up on our time out here, but I just want to ask, as we always ask our guests, if there's one secret you've got, and you've given us kind of a lot of secrets here today, but if there's one secret that you've got for filmmakers or maybe even podcasters, I guess, people who want to succeed in the media business, what would that one secret be?
Patience. Patience. That's all I got to say. In every part of the media business and every part of building a career, you need to understand the long game. So I'll use podcasting as an example. How many episodes you guys have going on right now?
I think this is 51. Yeah, relatively 51.
51. Okay. So you have already passed the threshold of most podcasters because most podcasters give up at 10 or 15 because they're like, no one's listening. Oh God, I'm not making any money at this. This is a lot of work. And it's like a thing. Whereas when I started my podcast, which now Indie Film Hustle is up to, I think, 408 episodes. I was doing 2 a week for 3.5 years. On just that one podcast. Now I've got like 7 podcasts because I'm insane. But that consistency of showing up every day and doing the work, that is the key. That is the secret to success in the media business. In any area you want to do, whether it's directing, camera work, editing, podcasting, writing a book, whatever it is, show up every day, do the work, do not associate outcome to it. Because you'll lose your mind. Because I promise you, when you start a podcast, you want 10,000 downloads tomorrow. That's not the way it works. It takes a long time to build up an audience. It takes and now, Jesus Christ, everybody has a podcast. Ever since COVID happened, I get hit up constantly, and I see all these podcasts show up, and then like I'll go, okay, well, let's see how long they last. And then I'm like, oh, okay, they passed 30. Great. But I've literally seen they started in February. They're out in April. I'm done. I'm out. I can't. This is way too much work. So patience is the best answer I can give, and the best secret to success in this business.
Yeah, big factor when it comes to audience development for sure. Okay, Alex, thanks so much for joining us. It was a great conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, guys. I appreciate it, man. Keep doing the good work that you're doing, man.
Thanks. All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next time. Big thanks to Alex Ferrari for joining us. If you're interested in the book, you can go to filmbizbook.com to get your copy of Rise of the Filmtrepreneur. You can check out all of his other work at indiefilmhustle.com if you want to listen to the podcasts. You can also check out bulletproofscreenwriting.tv if you're interested in screenwriting. So as always, if you enjoy the podcast, we'd love it if you went to iTunes and gave us a 5-star review. It's a real big help for podcasts like ours. So for Chris Monlux and everyone here at Videomaker, I'm Mike Wilhelm, and you've been listening to the Videomaker podcast. We'll catch you next time.